And that was Reboot the Show. Uh, so, welcome, greetings. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Greetings, greetings. So, according to my mobile device, everyone is with me. And I appreciate that. I'm grateful for your attendance and your support and your love and your donations and your constant words and offerings of goodwill. I'm grateful for that by way of this platform that we call YouTube. Give me a moment. I'm trying to set up my page so I can see my chat in front of me on my desktop now that I'm streaming live uh, from my mobile phone. I see my numbers have shifted, so some of you are going to have to reload the show. I'm on to point two, so the same link is not active. And that's why when I sent out my general announcements, I sent out my main show page. Hey there, I'm Mike Rugnetta. This is Crash Course Mythology. I'm trying to mute this in the background, and it's doing everything but mute. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so that's why I often send you my main show link, Voodoo Thai, youtube.com/Voodoo Thai, as opposed to paying attention to the individual links for the show that I might be broadcasting because of events like this. When I thank you, Takia Jet. I'm on my mobile now. Thank you. I'm on my mobile, and I also appreciate you all who are with me. I see you, Kiona. Give me a second here. Welcome, Kiona. Greetings, peace, and love. Your mic is now open, beloved. Area code 323. Is that not Kiona, or am I not being able to hear?
I was still muted.
Oh, okay, okay. Greetings, beloved. I just had to switch devices.
Greetings. Yes, because the buffering is stopped now.
Yeah, I'm on a new device. I'm on a new device. I'm just giving a moment
It's clear too.
for the other participants to catch up. I can see the numbers in terms of who's in the room on my end, and that's not always accurate, but I think people are still trying to switch from one show to the next. I'm not even finding my own live on my show page. I'm confused. Okay, I think I'm clicking on the wrong one. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and edit the name of that first piece of show so that people don't inadvertently click on that. It's still showing for some reason as live and active when we all know that it's not. But that's how it's showing up. So people have to click on the most recent 82. I'll go in and adjust the wording later for my listeners. The most recent 82. Refresh my show page. The most recent 82 revolutionary is where we are now. And so I greet you. I welcome you. I'm humbled and honored by your continued support, even through the technical glitches. So thank you so much for being present, and thank you, Kiona, for your continued support and offering and love as our technician here on the broadcast. I certainly appreciate that, and I couldn't do this without you. It would be a hot mess. I would be all over the place trying to keep up with everything and see everything and read everything, with all this other extra stuff going on. So thank you so much, everyone. Yes, everyone who's present. And if you have questions, comments, requests, please do get on the phone now at area code 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. There are several people online on the phone with me now, but know that you need to press the number 1 on your telephone keypad in order for me to hear you and acknowledge you and open your mic so that you can be heard. Otherwise, do type your questions, comments, requests in all capital letters in the live chat room, and I'll be more than happy to acknowledge you there. And Keon, of course, will assist me in doing that. In any ceremony, whether it be Yoruba or Ifa or, I'm sorry, Yoruba or Haitian Voodoo or Ewe Voodoo or Fan e Voodoo, there's always going to be the deity, the power that opens and closes the doors. However, it is not synonymous across the board as we try and treat it in the West. There might be some similarities. There might be some shared powers that have similarities to them. But these powers, these deities, are unique to an ethnic group, are unique to a family. So your gumbo is not my gumbo, and your jambalaya ain't my jambalaya, and nobody's jambalaya is Val's jambalaya. You know, so we all have a unique individual way of doing things and of addressing these things and of calling these powers and creating these powers and making these powers that's unique to ethnic group. The lineages, the traditions that we know and see today are supposed to be supported by this knowledge, this information. So what makes Santeria different from Lukumi? What makes Lukumi different from Nago tradition? Or the way it's being done in Oshogbo or Oya Kingdom or any specific geographic location in the West. It is that nuance of lineage, of ethnic group, and the differences that are birthed within how we as communities do things. It's how our cultures are formed. What makes cooking different in Asia, on the continent of Asia, as opposed to the continent of Africa or the continent of Europe. Lineage, family, cultural nuances, tradition. And so we tend to lump things together, soup things together, jambalaya things together, gumbo things together in the West. Firstly, out of sort of our wanting to quickly reduce things down to their most common denominator. We want to know within a second, a moment, what it is, how it works, how to use it, and then just push through with it. A great deal of that mindset has been promoted by advertisement, marketing, technology in the West. And so I can remember, back in the 60s, the 70s, but it began indeed with the era of television and radio, the soapbox, the moment for the advertiser to state their brand, to state their case, to sell you a product. And that soapbox culture evolved into then the technology of television, and then became advertisements and commercials. And of course, that does carry out into what you see on your shelf, what you see on the billboard, the signs that are placed in your community or in whose community at any given time. But I'm just keeping it simple. Radio, television, and how that has fed the Western idea of quick, fast, in a hurry. Uh, we then have drive-through and fast food technology, which applies just that, fast food. But what real food is fast? Uh, you can boil an egg fast. You can open a can of tuna, and maybe you make up a salad fast. But what food is really fast, other than natural foods, nature's made foods. So it's a mindset now that we have that all things happen quickly. That is also reinforced by, sort of our work ethic and industry in the West. And many of us are locked into 8 hour day, 40-hour week or greater. Many of you are experiencing greater weeks, those of you who are still working, and particularly our healthcare professionals and our medics and our technicians and our EMS people and all the people who are on the front line of what's going on right now. Indeed, but we're sort of programmed with this notion, this idea that all things happen fast, all things happen quickly, all things should take less than an hour to figure out, less than a minute to make sense to us, and we over rely sometimes. I would even say we're not truthful a lot of times with ourselves about what we really know. Some of you believe you can cook, but you really can't cook. Um, so some of you believe you can sing, but you really can't sing, beloved. You can sing in the most generic, basic sense of the word. Any attempt to put notes together, to put harmonies together, is an attempt at singing. But it's not the same thing as being able to sing. It's not the same thing as being able to cook. Um, we can all open a can. We can all open a box, and some people don't do that well. Okay, some people don't do that well. But it's not the same thing as being able to do something um, with some sense of real knowledge, some sense of real study, some sense of real awareness, some sense of real experience. So we cannot go at spirit and certainly how we look at and utilize and access the spirits in sort of that same sort of frame. We talked on yesterday about Babalu Oye, Omolu, and the idea that you don't call Babalu Oye, you don't invoke Babalu Oye, and that might have been implied with the Ricky Ricardo and Lucille Ball show. For those of you who are familiar, Ricky Ricardo's number one song on the Lucille Ball show was Babalu, which was an offering to Babalu Oye, or an acknowledgement of Babalu Oye. But we placate Babalu Oye. There are eguns, there are the dead, if you will, that we placate, that we offer cool water, that we offer food, that we offer substance, that they stay, that they remain, that they heal where they are, that they advance where they are, but not that they are being asked to get involved in our business, not that they're being asked to get involved in our daily activities, save for the opportunity to help, save for the opportunity to provide intervention. When we are looking at ancestors, we are really looking at, to use Yoruba, Egungun, our elevated ancestors, our ancestors who are not crippled figuratively, not sick figuratively, not broken, but are healed and in an elevated state in the spirit realm and are able to assist again in the livelihood of humanity to the best of their ability to get us to hear, to listen, and to pay attention. I thank you for your assistance and your comments, Kiona. No, this is indeed not a game for spectators, and it is for the chosen and no free or instant results. I absolutely agree. I've said on the show many times that one does not choose voodoo, voodoo chooses you. Just like one does not choose their lineage, your lineage has already chosen you. Now, the fact that you're not aware of your lineage, that you're not knowledgeable of your lineage, that you might be cut off from your lineage, or that you might be having some kind of dispute. Shout out to the royals within the line of your lineage and your family line. That's a whole nother thing. The availability for me to access Celtic knowledge, or I don't know why when I start trying to call off those European ethnic groups, I draw a blank. And I've studied many of them many times, the Nordic communities and all those ethnic groups. I make no attempts to appropriate their information, appropriate their powers, appropriate their knowledge to any degree other than awareness and self-education, and being able to identify what is what in any discussion of the Bible or religion or spirituality or philosophy or politics or any other given subject matter. I stay in my lane. I played the cards that were dealt me. I gave up any attempts to try and fit into a system, to a practice, to a teaching, to a lifestyle, to a job that wasn't organic to who I am, that wasn't organic to my person, to my very being. Thank you so much for your assistance, Kiona, with the questions. Hoodoo occultism, greetings, beloved. Thank you so much for being with us again. Um, what can a non-initiate do for themselves? Um, well, that's a very that's a very general question. I wish you were more specific with it. A non-initiate can do everything for themselves, um, and I don't want to sound like I'm repeating what I said yesterday or the day before. But start with what you're eating, start with what you're drinking, start with what you're thinking and how you live. Start with your inner world, what you think you know. I started with what I thought I knew. And for me, that was about religion. Now, my position or my experience might be different from yours. I grew up in tragic religion, abusive religion, religion in denial, religion that supported dark things and dark behaviors, religion that only was concerned about prosperity and wellness and wealth, and stair climbing and the acquisition of properties. I can remember that in this last ministry. Well, I shouldn't say last ministry because I was in two or three ministries on a smaller scale after that. But the last ministry before I left home, before I was a kid on the street, we're talking 13, 14, 15. I remember that we were on TV in the DC metropolitan area. We were on radio. We were in competition to some degree, and those are my words based on my observation, with other wealthy, successful, what will be called sanctified churches, apostolic churches, Pentecostal churches, churches where people spoke in tongues, churches where faith healing went down, churches where the casting out of devils went down. But primarily, they had an interest in prosperity, in abundance, and wealth. Um, we particularly recited the blessing plan out of the Old Testament on a regular basis. Once upon a time, I could recite it off the top of my head, and I probably still could right now if I really wanted to. But it was an environment that did not foster the utilizing of spirit in the most purest of ways. It absolutely acknowledged the power of God. The power of God was in that place, was in that space, was in that building, and you could feel it. It was palatable. Your hair would stand up. There were certain things that would go on there that absolutely represented God moving through the place. But then there was that human side of things, and then that demonic activity that was also generated from that space, and the abuses of power in that space, that gave me an early awareness, even before I started really stepping into hoodoo, root work, conjure, obia, because I explored those, was knowledgeable of those, was educated in those, was being trained and taught and mentored in those long before I came to Ifa or voodoo. Ifa and voodoo, as we know it today, are sort of orthodox in the realm of things, whereas hoodoo, conjure, root work is akin to your black spiritualist churches, such as what I'm describing. This was a black spiritualist church. Um, but there was so much other stuff going on. People playing the lottery and using spirit for that. People playing the numbers and using spirit for that. People going out and acquiring. You know, it was about acquisition of cars, land, property, and there was an opportunity, particularly when we were filming, taping, for people to run up to the mic, run up to the camera, and give their testimony. And some of you church folks that's under the sound of my voice, you generally speaking know what a testimony is. For those who don't, you know, it's an opportunity typically for you to stand up in the church and, you know, first giving honor to God, friends and family, and pastor and friends. You know, I'm truly grateful to be present in the house of the Lord one more time, you know, and then you give thanks for, you show gratefulness for, you know, and so folks talk about their healing, folks talk about, you know, their water bill was due, folks talk about their rent and their light bill was due, you know, and how God came through, you know, how the blessing came through. But in these prosperity ministry scenarios, oh wow, people was talking about Mercedes and Jaguars and they second house and they third house and they $500,000 house and they $200,000 job and they $300,000 job. And so the idea of the promotion of the material, the carnal, was strong in that environment. It superseded for many the spiritual, because if you came in and your chakras weren't vibrating, your chakras were blocked, your head was blocked up, you came in through your eyes, you came in through your nose, you came in through your ears, your third eye ain't open, so you're seeing, feeling, and experiencing from your lower coordinaries, your lower energy centers. um, you can absolutely acknowledge your ancestors. You can absolutely um, acknowledge other systems that sort of lead up to an entryway into higher learning. I learned about meditation. I learned about chakras. I studied religion. I think before I get too far off track, because I want to be clear about my answer to that question. You start where you are. And so I started from a place, from a position of religion, because that's what I knew. That's what I understood. And so I questioned the Bible. I read the Bible frontwards and backwards. I got the thesaurus and the Bible thesaurus and the other secondary books that you use to help you better understand. And I prayed and I begged God for clarity. I begged God for understanding. And each time I did so, it showed up in voodoo. It showed up in a crystal. It showed up from the spirit realm. And so I knew that what I already knew, already felt inwardly, was being confirmed in truth. But I still had to do the work necessary with each discovery, with each revelation. I still had to do the work attached to that, the ebo and the sacrifice attached to that. So I learned transcendental meditation. Transcendental meditation is powerful for opening and activating and utilizing your third eye, your ability to see clearly and to understand clearly, to take things in clearly. If I haven't made that point, that window, that quartz window that's shaped like a triangle is representative of the third eye and third eye awareness and or activity and the ability to see clearly in the figurative and the literal, to see clearly, to be clear about what you're seeing through the commercial, to be clear about what you're seeing through the ministry, to be clear about what you're seeing, through the investment, to be clear. A non-initiate can explore their body, explore their health, explore their overall sense of wellness, their attitude towards wellness, towards their health and wellness. All those things go into getting a clearer perspective inwardly of who you are in your spirit journey. Um, I strongly suggest minerals, crystals, and stones. It doesn't require religion. It doesn't require a theology or a mindset per se. It might require a mindset, a crystalline mindset, but not one that's attached, to a certain set of rules and protocols. Indeed, your stones have rules and protocols. You can't drop it; it'll break. It will shatter. It will fracture. you know, Only the strongest of hardness of stones and minerals won't violate that particular law. But in terms of it being used to be manipulated for negative, for evil, for wickedness, it's very hard to, if not possible, to use them for that end. They're one of the cleanest tools, in my experience, that you can utilize. We see crystals being manipulated in Superman and fantasy and cartoons in Hollywood movies. But I find them to be pure in their construction, pure in their nature, which is why science relies on them now in your quartz watches, in your quartz devices, in your cell phones, in your computers, because they maintain a vibratory pattern that can't be broken or shattered. Even the broken pieces of your quartz still contain the vibratory pattern of the original source. And even your pieces of quartz that have been removed from, separated from the mountain, the rock, the river, the larger cluster, if you will, is still going to retain that overall vibration. Now, it doesn't mean that it's as accessible or as usable to you as the unchipped, undamaged piece of clear quartz. And particularly if you're doing healing work, spiritual work, ritual work, you want a more perfected quartz because you're creating the reality, the vision, the product, the result that you seek. So you don't want chipped up. You don't want broken up. You don't want the stones that you've handled carelessly. You want your more perfected, more refined stones. And remember, even the most perfect stones have natural fissures in it, have natural pits and marks and dents in it. So I'm talking about, you got a perfected piece of quartz, its terminations are intact, but then you let your kids play with it and this is broken off. You've damaged the frequency. And what I mean by frequency is, I'm a musician, many of you know. I'm a singer, many of you know. I don't always do it so well here on camera, but I do indeed sing, and sing well when I really want to. But I can hear note, I can hear harmony, I can hear tone. And so even with my silver, I can tap certain crystals and hear a note and hear a harmony, hear tone, I should say, not a harmony, but a tone. And it changes when a crystal is broken. It changes when a crystal has been damaged from its natural form. And that's why I suggest often here in this platform that you use unchipped, undamaged, unpolished, unshaped stones like my laser wand because it maintains its vibration. This is one of the stones, not its vibration, its harmony, its note, its tone. This is one of the stones that I can tap with my silver and get a high pitch resonance from, no matter what. And it's called a laser wand. You also see them sold as singing crystals. Singing crystals. And singing crystals are not exactly laser wands because laser wands are going to have ridges, grooves, indentations, markings all along its body. Singing crystals will often be smooth, naturally, not polished, because typically they're small, smooth, and when they're brushed together, when they rub together, they emit that high tone that I'm able to resonate from bigger undamaged crystals by tapping my silver rings on them. So damaging a crystal, breaking a crystal, polishing a real crystal absolutely changes its harmony, changes its vibration, changes its tone, changes its natural resonance, if you will. So when you're doing healing work, mind work, consciousness work, you want your better, more perfected, more undamaged stones. Um, when you're doing lower chakra work, physical body work, you can use those quartz pieces as well as your other non-clear stones to do that type of work. Kiona, beloved, I see you. Let's see. Okay, I see you responding to me. Can singing crystals be used in water for healing? I don't suggest you putting singing crystals in water. Um, One, the water is now muting that resonance, that vibration. Two, the water can dull your clear quartz. So be very careful about the quartz pieces that you choose for putting in water. I know some of you are familiar with the idea of using using quartz crystal to charge water, to add a vibratory pattern to your water. You want to use the clearest of quartz. You probably want to use polished or tumbled quartz. Um, because you want to be sure that no other minerals are leaking from your quartz. If your quartz is natural, broken, it could have other minerals. Your chlorite could be in it. Your hematite could be in it. Some other mineral composites can be in it that you might not be able to necessarily see. So you want to use clear quartz that's polished in most cases, or um, as clear as possible, unchipped, unbroken, undamaged. A Herkimer diamond might be great in this regard to use in water, but I wouldn't use singing crystals. I wouldn't use your singing crystals. Forgive me, Blog Talk Radio, for neglecting you. I'm going to start with area code 301. Area code 301. I am now opening your mic. Who's calling and where are you calling from? Area code 301.
Mhm.
Yes, beloved. Greetings.
Greetings, Hatap. Let me turn your video down.
Hotepu. Hotepu.
Hatap, so good to speak with you. I'll be brief. My question is, I had a dream about you last night. Long story short, you had a needle, you were putting it in your arm, and you would take it out with your blood, and you said, you listed off several spirits. And I said, no. Then you did it again, no. Then you said, Voodoo. And I said, yes, put my arm down, and you're about to give me your blood. then I said, well, wait. And my spirit had me ask you, I have these two crocodile spirits. They came in dream time. They told me to put them on the altar. And I asked you in the dream, should I feed them? I haven't been feeding them or doing anything. They just had me put them on my shrine. And I told you in a dream, I'll be back. Like, I'm coming to you. I'm coming. But is there something I can do with them in the meantime?
Okay. First of all, I'm perplexed by the first part about the blood. I'm not understanding that. Um, Blood is a very controversial thing in voodoo. I want to be clear about human blood or anything of your question. But just give me a moment, okay? YouTube Live, you all can see me moving through the house. He could have rang my bell. Ah, that would have been nice. But I heard the thud against my door. Now give me just a second here to bleach my hands. Got bleach water. Anytime I go near the door or touch anything coming into my house, I bleach my hands. I only use my right hand because I never let go of the phone during the whole process. Okay, beloved, I'm here. And thank you all for your patience.
Yes.
That was actually quite a bit of popcorn, like 12 pounds of popcorn. I like popcorn. I have a air popper. And in a time like this, people need their snacks. And I have another bag coming that's 25 pounds of popcorn. So the first part, that needs some further translation. And in a better setting, this will be done in a private consultation. I would have you email me this in writing, and I would look at the wording and the details of the dream um, specifically. But I'm concerned about again, because of how you described the blood early on, the presence of vampiric, parasitic like energy that might be around you. And I could be referencing your accessing people, accessing readers, accessing multiple people who are claiming voodoo, who are claiming hoodoo. You need to be very careful of that. If you're doing that, you need to limit that, and if not, stop it. If you are doing it, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of these people, especially right now, prey on you. They prey on your ignorance. They prey on your lack of awareness. They prey on what you don't know. And so anytime I see vampiric like, you know, parasitic like demonstration, um, I think I remember you saying something that felt like initiation, even in association with that, the first part of the dream. Be careful if you're shopping around. Be careful in your shopping around, and make sure you're getting the details. People should have a footprint. I have a footprint all the way back to elementary school. I got people from high school, elementary school on my Facebook. I have clients that I've known since 2000 that are active in social media. So these readers, these practitioners, they should have a footprint. They shouldn't have just started reading yesterday. They shouldn't have just started hearing from spirits a year ago. And some of them will try and present it as, well, you know, I was finding my way and I was in denial, and you know, they've been speaking to me, but now at 35, I hear them clearly enough to offer services to you. No, don't do that. And so the alligators, you know, feeding the alligators, you know, um, feeding the spirits. is always important. It's always necessary. But you can also feed gluttonous spirits, particularly if you're not initiated, particularly if you aren't clear about what you're doing, particularly if you are invoking what you believe to be Orisha or deities or powers. Some of you have Legba set up, and it ain't Legba there that's responding to you. It's some other spirit. It's some other jinn. So you have to be careful about how you operate in terms of shrine work, calling on particular spirits, particular deities. And I'm responding to you, but I'm also responding to our beloved participant, Hoodoo, Brother Hoodoo, occultism, about what can non-initiates do. I would stick to my ancestors. I would stick to my ancestors. You know, having imagery of others' powers around the house is okay. You know, I got Asiatic deities. I've got Egyptian deities in my house. I've got indigenous deities and symbolism in my house. But it's not the same thing as my shrine work. It's not the same thing as my altar work. It's not the same thing as me trying to harness those deities to sort of do my bidding. And the spirit realm is alive with diversity. And so there are disincarnate spirits, disembodied spirits, the dead, lower powers, elementals. You know, we don't think about fairies and gnomes and elves, you know, that come from our Eurocentric roots. But there are equivalents to those powers, to those spirits in every part of the world. We don't think about that. And they can be disruptive. They can disrupt your work. They can disrupt your spirit. So right now, that's the best I can address that dream. I implore you to write that in an email and send that to me, and let me look at that deeper, and on a deeper level. Let me come right back to you, beloved. I got many people that got their hands raised right now, and I'm so grateful for that. Area code 973. Area code 973. Your mic is open. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
Really?
Yes, beloved,
Greetings,
973.
Hi, this is
Greetings.
Jet.
Yes,
How
Takia.
are you?
All is a blessing in yourself.
Thank you for taking my call. You answered my question when you mentioned the singing bowl. So I'm going to ask another question. I've heard you say in other your broadcast, like taking voodoo secrets to the grave. Like there would be rituals or things that you would never disclose to your initiates. Could you explain why that is? And I'm going to hang up. And
I didn't understand that. I need you to say that again.
Okay. So you said like there would be things like rituals or just secrets that you would never like disclose to an initiate, to friend.
I never said that. I never said that. So I'm either misunderstanding you or you misunderstood me. I never said there were things I would not disclose to my initiates. I disclose everything to my initiates, particularly my initiates.
Okay.
I'm desperately trying to gift all that I know to someone else. The problem is everybody can't retain that information. Everybody can't handle that information. There's a little known symbolism behind Christ and the disciples that I'm going to share with you right now. And that is, if God is God, all powerful, bigger than all humanity, bigger than all the universe, how then does it squeeze itself into one vessel? So there's a quantum metaphysical understanding that energy had to be dispersed. In this case, at least among 12 people. And so the soul is powerful. The soul is big. Any soul. And so that's why I say, when we talk about soulmate, it's not about twos. And it's not so confined to love and relationships. We travel in soul groups, soul families. So that power, that energy has to be dispersed amongst more than one person. So I disclose everything to my godchildren. Now I meet them at their level. I meet them where they are. I don't feed them steak
Oh,
if they still eating,
okay.
pureed carrots and milk. I don't try and force
Okay.
them, steak. Now, what I might have said is things about going in and out of the cemetery that I don't say on radio, that I don't say to regular folk.
Okay.
Um, Sakaya, I'm grateful. Arisha Ashe, I'm grateful for your offering, but I don't get none of those offerings that you send to YouTube. I've never been able to figure it out. It's never worked for me. It never comes back to me. So I have no idea where that goes. So I ask people to support me through my PayPal link at paypal.me/the Divine Prince. Sometimes it's in the chat. Sometimes I pop it in. Sometimes Kiona pops it in. Forgive me if you were not aware. Um, and I would like to know. I beg of YouTube and Google ads to make it make sense to me, but I've never, in the over a year I've been doing this show, never seen any response in my PayPal account from any donation that was ever made on YouTube. So I don't get it. But it's all is a blessing. I'm sure YouTube knows what to do with it unless you cancel it. All is a blessing. Yes, beloved, bring me back to the question, Takia.
I think you answered it.
Well, I appreciate you. I certainly appreciate you calling in and participating actively in the show. Um,
Thank
you can just mute yourself if you would like, and you can remain on the phones. Those of you who are on the phones, if you remain on the phones, when the end of the show comes, you won't be cut off. You'll be able to hear the overflow content at 2 o'clock. I'm now looking at area code 305. 305 area code. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
How you doing? Hello.
All is a blessing.
Can you hear me?
Who's calling and where are you calling from?
This is Andrea from Miami.
Hey, Andrea. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings to you. I called you today to just give you an update about my doctor's appointment today after my reading on the weekend. All is well. Another confirmation. That is what I needed. That is the doctor I needed. Much positivity. You did confirm that yesterday that was a good idea. I also got a confirmation while I was in the office. The funny thing about it, while I was in the office, a patient came in while I was there, and the patient came in after my visit was over, was Alonzo Mourning. So that was another confirmation that I was definitely in the right office, doctor's office. So I just wanted to let you know that, and looking forward to positivity after my appointment today.
Well,
So the reading gave me led to my right doctor.
Well, give thanks. Give thanks. All is truly and indeed a blessing. I appreciate you. I appreciate the follow up. I appreciate the opportunity to see spirit work as I expected to. Area code 216. Area code 216. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
Yes, hi, my name is Patricia.
Hey, Patricia, speak up just a little bit for me. Greetings.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Yes.
Hi, I had called last week with a particular question, and I'm thankful that I'm just being educated and learning about voodoo, and I'm being general because I'm not, and so I don't want to appear disrespectful. That's why I'm listening. I want to find out something. I'm here in Cleveland and relocated back here about 8 years ago to help my aunt, who has since died. And it's just been problematic. I mean, I dealt with what I call psychic attacks. Just it's just really been such a negative, toxic place, and it's affected me, my health, money, so on and so forth. I need to find. My question is, uh, do I have any type of curses or things like that? Because I believe the city here, there's some type of demonic negative energy here.
And what city is that?
Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes.
I mean,
Hmm.
I stay to myself basically.
Yeah, there's a
And
lot
I
of ghosts.
pray,
I'm sorry, there's a lot of ghosts in those industrial cities. There's absolutely a lot of ghosts there, a lot of negative energy there, poltergeists and negative hotspots, if you will.
mm,
Absolutely, but
yeah.
spirit is led me to ask who's involved. I'm not seeing necessarily, the negative energy from the city as being what is
Mm-hmm.
the cause of your psychic attacks. I'm asking, since this death in the family, who's involved? Who all is involved other than you?
What in
Would it be her
it's
family?
hmm,
Would it be her descendants? Who would be unhappy about your relationship to her, and how things have progressed since she passed?
um, it can be any. I have cousins. There are no siblings. And there was a cousin, a male cousin, already living here. So because I was living elsewhere out of another state, and of course, long story short, right over to the funeral, suddenly it's all this concern, and there are other male cousins as well. So if they were so concerned about her, then even before I moved here, they could have helped. But while I was here, there was no, well, let's go to the store, and
Mm-hmm.
help you with food or da da da, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
They
and then
believe you
the
have something.
yeah.
They believe you
And
have
I don't
something.
know if it's something ancestral going on with me.
They believe you have something. First of all, they believe you have
Oh,
something,
really?
gained something, earned something by way of your relationship to this aunt. That's the first thing.
Mm.
The thing that has really
Uh,
been passed down through the aunt is the spiritual powers, the spiritual knowledge, and the spiritual gifts in that family that have been denied for generations. So there is some ancestral activity there in relation to
uh-huh.
what you are feeling or
Yeah.
experiencing. But your guide strongly suggests that the source for what you are interpreting as a psychic attacks or spiritual attacks are coming from people within the family who might otherwise feel like you have something or gained something in this process, uh, but also can be an
Uh-huh.
extension of her, and she could be pushing through for unfinished business,
Mm.
unexplored subject matter that might again be tied to her, and then subsequently to her passing. Um, that's the source of the psychic attacks. It's not the city
Yeah.
itself per se. Now, moving away from the city, you'd be
Okay.
moving away from these people. So it would look like it's
Yeah.
the city, but it's this family.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything. So anyway, and I'm not in contact with them.
Hmm.
Um, and thanks for telling me this. It gives me some clarity because I thought it was someone else, also not family. But yeah, the so-called friend of hers, two of them, there were two ministers. One was, you know, when they were before, because she was a minister, two ministers ministers, and they weren't cooperating with me. Just very nasty, um, and what I had to go through to help her, her bank cards and so on and so forth. They kept them, and they basically didn't pay her rent for about a year, and I didn't, and so I had nothing to do with that.
If that
And of
was
course,
her,
she was allowing them.
if that was her core support, they would show up as family in the reading.
Mm-hmm.
In what I'm doing now, which is an empathic reading, they would show up as family, whoever was closest to her.
Mm-hmm.
So they feel
Mm-hmm.
or believe, and it doesn't have to be true. The truth is you haven't earned or gained anything, but that doesn't have to be true to them.
Mm-hmm.
In order for them to feel some kind of way to project some kind of unhealthy or harmful energy at you. It could be the value of your service and your reputation and your honor that's being attempted to be sullied. Understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Because one of these ministers, he had her so controlled. I'll use that word. That her whatever policy that she did have or whatever, he had it. She donated to. I mean, not that I was going to give anything, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just really polluting her mind,
Mm-hmm.
and of course she was cooperating with them. And and in the funeral, the listing of when that my name wasn't even in there, but all my other cousins were. And so it's like I said, it was a mess. And basically, long story short, it's not only them, but it's just other people, outsiders, that not necessarily friends, and it's that it's just been really difficult for me, and I, like I said, been struggling with the money part and getting decent jobs, to earn something, and then to start a business or a hustle, side hustle, and that's been a challenge because, well, certainly now I can't leave this city. But I don't believe in being in places where I'm not, welcome or liked. I thought I was going to be moving, to Washington State, but, certainly not now. So, like I said, I'm working on coming back to just teaching myself, music, playing my acoustic guitar so that I can write my songs and
Yes.
and really, my
Yes.
life, my divine, gifts, which I believe are, the written word and so on and so forth. So I, with this tying down, I mean, it's not bothering me because I've always felt, my whole life, not understood, rejected, and so on and so forth. So I've just probably developed a thicker skin or a shield, a protective shield, more or less. So, and I'm just being constructive, learning, developing my talents and gifts, and praying, obviously for the whole world and people and Mother Earth and so on and so forth. But obviously, taking care of myself because I have a health matter that's of some serious concern as well. And it's, I have to still continue to research, and, I always practice gratitude.
Yes.
But anyway, it's,
I invite
if
you.
I can,
I invite you to connect with me. I'm not sure. I'm not always sure who's on the phone, so I don't know if you already have had readings with me, or if you're already a client of mine. But I need you to connect with me. I need you to communicate with me off air, and maybe I can help you to address some of your questions, your concerns, your issues. But I certainly appreciate your participation. and your support here at the show, and of course your active questions, comments, and phone call. If you just bear with me for a moment, I will come back to the phone lines momentarily. I want to answer area code 281. Area code 281. Who's calling and where are you calling from? Your mic is open.
Hi, it's St. Bruner, and I'm calling from Houston, Texas. And you were speaking about the nuances between Papa leg body, leg body, and shoe, and it kind of we fell off. But my real question was, what are your ideas and or like opinions about angel numbers or number synchronicities? Because I see a lot of them, 11, 11, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, 2, 2, 2. And when I first started seeing them, I was floored because I was like, okay, cool, my meditation's working, I'm getting some kind of a breakthrough a little bit, or the matrix is melting, or however you want to put it. But then they started coming much more frequently because I was recognizing them, that journaling them or trying to figure out what they mean at the specific time that they come, it just doesn't resonate. So I'm trying to figure out if whether or not I should be looking at numerology, because just Googling it every time I see one is not, it's kind of falling flat for me at this point.
Yeah, because you're getting generic information.
Right.
Numerology, unfortunately, is a lot like horoscope or dream books, even, in that they just too generic. They're very generic. They're very basic. They're very surface. I might even say to some degree they're very shallow. First, everyone's symbolism, language symbolism is different. So what a number might mean, or what a color might mean, or what a particular energy might represent for one might be different for the next. But I definitely, which was embedded in your question, definitely support studying numerology. Studying numerology, and not just common modern numerology, but divine numbers. There's a continuity of information as relates to divine numbers that goes all the way back to ancient times. I often offer the secret teachings of the ages, the secret teachings of the ages by Manly P. Hall as a great starting book for any spiritual practitioner, spiritualist, person who's interested in spirituality, a person who's interested in understanding religion, and how religion has progressed from the 13, 14, 1500s to sort of where we are now. So there's a synchronicity of numbers that is unified in tarot, for instance. The ace means the same thing universally. The number 2 means the same thing universally. The number 3 means the same thing universally. And so there are tarot readers that are out there who are going on feeling. Well, I feel and it looks like, and that's not reading the science. That's not reading the numbers as they show up on the cards. And the double numbers, the double numerals, are really master numbers. So master numbers like 11, like 22, 44, have a specific connotation to them that can be found in Masonic science, magical sciences, ritual sciences, ancient Egyptian attitude towards numbers and what those numbers represented. And that knowledge, that wisdom is universal. It's how I can tell someone who knows what they're doing as a tarot reader versus someone who just decided to buy some cards and start using them. Those double numbers, like 11, for instance, is a gateway. It's a portal. It's two pillars, if you will. It's two shutters being opened. So 11s always represent that portal into intra-dimensional time space, shifting from one place to another, one place of understanding to another, one place of understanding to another, etc. There are also master numbers, that aren't like double repeated numbers. Like 360, for instance, would be a master number. 180 would also be a master number. 12 and 24 are also considered master numbers. So your double numbers are your representation of master numbers. Your first master number would be 10, which represents both the individuality of humanity, man and woman, but also God. The one is representative, and then the zero is representative. So master numbers take your individual Arabic numbers, 0 through 9, to the next level, to the higher level, to an increased power, if you will, to an increased strength. So that's what the showing up of these double numbers right now in your life is representing. So I would absolutely read that book, The Secret Teachings of the Ages by Manly P. Hall. I would absolutely
I
study
love
it
it.
and learn numerology, and the numerology study that's out there, that's available, if you don't choose to study that with me.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone who has already spoken, who's still on the line with me. Um, your mics are still open. All you have to do is unmute your mic at any given time. If you have a question, comment, request, if you want to come back into the conversation. Of course, Kiana, you can always jump in if you have something to say, a question, a comment, or if I'm not capturing what might be present in the live chat. Legba, Ilegwa, Eshu do share a commonality in terms of number. And so they all are said to resonate with the number 3. For those of you who've had a tarot card reading with me before, you already know my attitude, my opinion, my understanding of the divine number 3. It is offensive leadership, that which is pre planned, predetermined, well thought out. But even when we look at numerology, we look at the point being number 1. Not necessarily a line, but the point. That point in time through Arab culture became the alif, which is our Roman numeral 1, is what we now have as the Roman numeral 1. And it is God, the single God or goddess, or God without sex identification. It is the single individual. It is a single point in time space. It is beginning and ending with yourself. It is being born naked and alone. It is dying naked and alone. It's all representative in that number 1. 2 is a defensive number. It not only represents pairs, partnerships, the coming together of two powers, two forces, but it is a defensive number. Um, when we are set up to protect and defend from an outside action or activity, from a predetermined action or activity, which is your 3, your number 3. So there are particles that are pieced together in number 3. There are laws that are pieced together that come together in the number 3, that give it sort of its power. It is a crossroad. It is the first crossroad. The 3 is a crossroad before the number 4. So it is a crossroads. It is putting together, uh, the molecules, the proteins, the proper atoms, the proper chemistry that goes into forming a cell or forming life, or in forming creation, if you will. So it's a proactive, procreative number. And so we find that Eshu, Legba, Ilegwa also have a commonality around phallic symbols. You see Legba in particular in West Africa at the crossroads of a community, at the crossroads of a village, representing the opening and closing, but also empowerment. And that phallic symbol or that sign of the penis goes back to Kemet, goes back to men, M-I-N. I posted some old Egyptian tarot cards on my Instagram the other day. You can't even get those cards anymore. And it has a picture, a depiction of men on them. M-I-N, men. We often see men and also Geb, G-E-B, the earth deity, without their penis. It's been scrubbed out of pictures. It's been removed from pictures. You often see Nut, N-U-T, with the sky stretched to her body and the stars stretched out through her body, and Geb beneath her with no phallics, or an implied phallics, because the Western mind over-sexualizes that. The Western mind couldn't handle that. So in many of the old books, even some of the Mason books, it's erased out, it's sketched out, it, it's implied by some other symbol. But this tarot card that I posted has everything intact on men. And it is a ancient ancestor to Legba and Eshu and Elegua as figures of great power, of great procreation and recreation. Um, the number 9 is my number when I do my numerology, my names, plural. 9 is always in there. Even my legal name. I took some great care before I legally had my name changed 30 years ago, 3 decades ago, to ensure that the numerology vibrated where it needed to be, where I wanted it to be, and where my godparents and my mentors had suggested. So 9 is all up and through. It's in my birth date, the number 9, and it is a number that represents things that evolve or escalate. So it's a evolutionary number. It's about reaching the end, if you will, and then beginning again anew, but at a higher octave, at another level. Just like our numerology goes from 0 to 9, but now when you get to 10, when you get to 11, now you're at a newer level, a newer octave, a newer place of viewing things, a newer position. Oya is all up and through the number 9. Sudden change and transformation is implicit to people who vibrate at the number 9, who operate within that number 9. So I expect you to have calamities in your life path, tragedy in your life path, harsh upbringing, harsh childhoods in life path of people whose life path number is number 9. Your life path number might be different from your career number or other numbers that show up to make the fullness, the wholeness of who we are. That's your deeper level understanding of numerology. But if your life path number is number 9, that's what I'm describing right now. 9, in its most general sense, Yoel, is evolutionary, revolutionary, holistic. It moves things, as I suggested, to the next level, to the next octave. Nothing can remain still in number 9 or remain blocked or constipated or even consistent to some degree with the number 9 because it shakes up like Oya, like the tornado, like weather. It shakes up our basic sense of what reality is. We develop an illusion of reality that doesn't move, that's consistent, or follows, a very careful yearly plan with our life, but the reality is we're constantly in motion. The planet is in motion. I wish I had an FOI in the room. I can't remember exactly to what speed Earth is spinning, but we're in constant motion at a high rate of speed. And so too is being grounded, being stable. It's just an illusion. It's just an inner way or place of being. It's just an inner momentary demarker. Because the truth is, we're constantly in motion. While you're just not playing catch up to Orisha, catch up to Loa, catch up to ATR, catch up to identifying your spirit path, your religious path, your consciousness. Life is still moving forward. Life is still moving forward. So some of us feel rushed. Some of us feel paced. Some of us are concerned about, timing and getting our work done. Others feel like they have plenty of time. And it's showing up even in some of your attitudes toward Miss Rona. Some of you still don't get it. Some of you still think you young, you healthy, you vibrant. You go to the gym every day, you vegan, or you sanctified or religious, covered under the blood, and you just can't fight science. You can't fight biology. You can't fight Mother Nature. That's it. You can't fight Mother Nature. Okay, so be erudite, be conscious in your movements. Young people are dying, teenagers, babies, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds. So it can reach you, it can touch you. On a regular basis, we hear about the basketball player, 16, 18, 20, having an aneurysm on the court, having an undisclosed or undiscovered, heart problem or other health complications. So come on now, don't be one who still don't believe fat meat is greasy. That's what my Facebook post was about. Don't be that person. Get out of these streets. Keep your ass at home. Sit it down. Be still. Take this time to explore and participate in the questions and the activities and the comments that we're doing here in this space. 9 is also your 9 months gestation period. It represents a seasonal sign greater than 7 that moves things to another place, another season, another time, another way of being. We're in a 9 season right now. We're in a 9 season, if you don't already know. Life as you know it will never be the same. Life as you know it has changed forever. Life won't always be this complicated. Life won't always be this tragic. Life won't always be this unhealthy. Life won't always be this unclean. But life as you know it has changed forever. And so I'm a new person. You're a new person. We're all a new person now existing in a new world. And we have to learn ourselves again, learn ourselves anew. And that is pushed, beloved, Yoel Adamus, by the number 9, greatly by the number 9. I appreciate your questions, your comments, your requests. Iyami is all up and through. Iyami is all up and through. Aj is all up and through. Aj is all up and through. Aj is often sort of loosely interpreted as luck, but it's deeper than that. It's greater than that. I don't believe in luck anymore since I graduated from evangelical Christianity into ATR and African-based spiritual systems. I know that prosperity and blessing can be fed. I know that prosperity and blessing can be acknowledged and elevated and nurtured to a greater level, to a greater degree. In us all, I came to realize and understand that it shows up not just in the material or in the carnal or in the physical, but it also shows up in the spiritual, in the ethereal. It shows up in character. There are people who walk through life with the presence of luck, of blessings, of wealth, and you therefore draw that back to you. Beloved, did anybody have something to say? Area codes 323.
Hi, this is Kiana. I had something to say.
Go ahead, beloved. I knew because I heard that background noise. Go ahead.
Sorry, the garden. I apologize. The gardener's outside and it's a mess.
You don't have to apologize.
But I was wanting to just touch base. Okay, thank you. I used to think that there was a blockage as it pertains to relationships and sexual desire. But the more that my calling gets stronger and stronger, and the more demand that it's requiring of me to, because I can't run from it, the more that I'm really interested in connecting with people that I'm attracted to. And I'm almost wondering if abstinence is a huge part of this path at certain levels.
It can be. It's not like a precursor or prerequisite. It's not like it's a rule, if you will. However, as I was answering beloved brother, the truck driver, Hoodoo, I never remember the second part of his name. Hoodoo occultism was asking earlier in the show, what can people who are not initiated do? So part of that process, as I said before, was getting to know yourself at every level of yourself. So you might start with religion, or you might start with health. You know, you might start with diet. You might start with exercise, but start somewhere on the journey. But in that process, many of us reach a crossroads, if you will, where we consider fasting. And fasting happens on many levels. You know, there's fasting from sex, there's fasting from food, there's fasting from, media, and social media. Separating ourselves, if you will, talk about initiation in relationship to wilderness. So it doesn't have to be, I'm gonna go out into the country, for 30 days, 10 days. I know some people who do that. I have a nephew who does that. Goes on these hiking trips in the Ozarks, disappears for 3 days or whatever, and then comes back. But then some of you can't physically do that, or literally do that, and so you have to do it where you are. You have to do it in the city. You have to do it in the field. You have to do it in the suburbs. You have to do it in the country. You have to do it where you are. I remember before I relocated permanently to New Orleans, just in Chicago, and I still love Chicago. Chicago is where I was born. Chicago is my heart. Nothing compares to that lakefront in Chicago. So I would spend a lot of time on that 20 miles or so of lakefront bike trail. I would spend a lot of time on the shore, on the rocks, as they were back then. Now it's a lot of concrete. But I would spend a lot of time there. There was fruit trees there. There was blackberry trees there. It was my isolation from the city, which was just to my back. But I'm looking now out to the lake, and all I'm seeing is water and birds and sky and spirit and nature. For those of you who are familiar with Belmont Rocks, before they destroyed Belmont Rocks, they were huge, huge blocks, almost like the Great Pyramid, except they were set up like steps, like ledges, and they would move over time. Because of the water from the lake, of course, but more importantly because of that freezing activity that happens in the wintertime. And so these blocks would then, someone's giving me great background noise. So I'm muting everybody right now for a moment. And so I would go into these blocks, Belmont Rocks is what they were called. And I had specific areas that were like my divination room, or my lounging room, or my smoking room, or my crystal room. There were certain rocks that had little basins carved out in them, where water would collect, and I would do all kind of things out there. But the idea that we can live this modern life in this modern world with our modern activities, you know, children responsibilities, spousal responsibility, roommate responsibilities, of course, employment and work, and then just instantly step into spirit, it's just not doable in many ways. It's just not. We talk about finding the balance. We talk about, creating sacred space where you are. But people often require that wilderness period, literally or figuratively, where you pull back from things that are exposing your energy to other people. Keona, another part of that question that I need to respond is about the fact that you're a woman, and a woman is taking in DNA into her body every time she's intimate with a person, and science has proven this. This ain't hoodoo talk, and so that is now a part of your energy field. It's a part of your makeup now, and a woman has to thus overcome that moving forward. It's why sometimes it's so hard to let go. It's why it's sometimes so hard to break up. It's why sometimes that person's energy, that person's spirit continues to haunt you. You can smell them, and they're not there. You can feel them, and they're not with you. They wake you up in the middle of the night. So yes, many religious practice, religious cultures, spiritual practices, even the sadhu in India, who we don't necessarily associate with religion. Many dreadlock and culture people and conscious people and Afrocentric people and indigenous folk and artistic folks all like the sadhus. They have the long hair. They don't cut their hair. They have the dreadlocks. They basically don't work or don't participate in quote unquote society. Their job is ritual, prayer, sometimes performance in terms of music, religious music, or cleansing, smudging, reading, and then they receive donations for their livelihood. Their wilderness period, if you will, is a lifelong commitment um, to remove themselves from regular society, regular culture, everyday living. But most of us don't have either that mindset, that luxury to do so, or the impetus and the skills and the tools and the resources to do so. So, sort of the makeshift wilderness is created, the spiritual retreat, the initiation that's $5,000, $10,000, in Cuba that you go off to, and so they might stipulate no sex, no outward communication, no exposure to external forces for any, specific given time. So no, it's not a prerequisite. It's not a requirement. It's not mandatory, but it comes up in the journey. I have some godchildren that it's a part of their Odu. And so if it comes in your Odu, then that's specific as a part of your initiation, if you will, about sex, about marriage, about relationships, about intimacy. I also find that empaths have to be careful about that connection as well. So if you're experiencing emotional changes, mental health changes, regulatory changes as it relates to your balance, your energy, how you progress, it absolutely can be beneficial, Kiona. It absolutely can be helpful in getting your mind right, getting you centered and clear about who you are and where you are at any given point in your journey. Yes, a separation in many
Thank you so
levels.
much. That,
Go ahead,
Thank you
beloved.
so very much for that. Because I was wondering, I was wondering, like, is there something wrong with me? And then, because it's certain guys that I like, and then there's some that their energy repels me. It's just like, ugh, it's like I want to regurgitate. It's like,
Hmm.
I'm laughing, but it's really not funny
But it can work
because
the
it's
other
just
way.
like, no, and it's their energy.
Now it can work the other way too. Now I know many women, and you all listening to me do too. P. Marie, I'm going to answer that question in a moment. Um, I'm gonna answer that in a moment. But yeah, um, what was I saying? Oh shoot, Kiana, what were we talking about?
When I said that some guys' energy make me say, ugh, when I'm
Oh,
around them,
I
when
was
they
gonna
want to be intimate.
I was gonna say it also works in the reverse. We all know many women who, the minute they're in love, they don't know you anymore. That they're not your best girlfriend anymore. That they're not calling your phone the way they normally do, and they completely shut down and cut you off. We all know women who disown their family or limit communication with their family when a man or woman or love interest is present. And in that environment, they're not growing spiritually, they're not growing emotionally. And so then the relationship begins to look codependent, enabling, addictive, on many levels. So I agree with you 100%, but it happens in both ways. Just because the relationship is not having arguments and domestic issues and other challenges does not mean that sometimes people don't get into marriage, get into relationships, and then stop doing their work and then become codependent in an unhealthy way in the relationship that does not allow them to do their homework. If your lifestyle is only about, you know, family, the children, paying the bills, where's your opportunity to do your self work? And sometimes people forget that even though you become a couple, um, you still have your self work that needs to be addressed. You still have to do your homework as it relates to this lifestyle. Um, that's an interesting question, P. Marie. It even leans into the argument about life, and about abortion, and about when is a child, when is a human, uh, that comes into play with that question. Um, so yeah, I don't, they count the life of the child from the point of birth, from the point that you are breathing and conscious and operating on the outside of the womb. But many mothers suggest that there's consciousness even in the womb, that they dream with the baby, that the baby experiences and moves in response to certain stimuli, and sometimes certain stimuli from outside the womb. So it's an interesting question for sure. Sky Frank, clearing someone's energy from you has to happen on every level: the physical level, the spiritual level, the emotional level, the mental level. So, you know, it's easy to summer's eve. It's easy to take a spirit bath, a cleansing bath, a sweet bath, whatever. It's easy to do, a separation ritual, a soul tie cutting ritual. Those are easy to perform, but it's a lot more difficult at the figurative level to cut those ties. Again, those ties that cause you to smell a person, to feel a person, to hear from a person who's not there with you. Um, I have a soul tie that I can think about. I can say certain things in the room. I can move certain stones, certain crystals around, and like predictable clockwork. They're calling, they're texting, they're reaching out. It's been happening for decades, so it's so predictable now. It's beyond predictable. Some soul ties are not meant to be cut; they're meant to be healed. They're meant to be worked through. Um, it could be signs of lessons that you need to heal, you need to address. Because what happens is you then carry that into the next relationship. You then call that forward. You then bring that forward in the next partner, in the next person that you get with, in the next scenario. Or that becomes a reoccurring, repetitive uh, presentation in your life, demonstration in your life. You have to do the soul level work, the spirit level work. You have to do the healing work, which requires not just, how do I forget? How do I say goodbye? How do I stop thinking about? But what is it that still holds you to, ties you to the thinking, the feeling at a deeper level? What is it that you require? What is it that you feel was being fulfilled there? And you have to look at what goes wrong. That's another thing. People are easy to forget what goes wrong after some time, or if that person shows up again, offering sweet nothings, and roses, how quickly we then forget the bad times. It's that ability for humanity to move in and out of intra-dimensional space, to move in and out of the past and the future, in and out of our feelings and our vision of what a thing is, versus sitting in the truth of something, sitting in the moment of something, realizing what's happened just now, just right now. There are many ways to cut soul ties that are unhealthy, soul ties that aren't good for you, soul ties that are toxic for you, soul ties that are negative for you. But some of what's showing up as troublesome, as worrisome, also, as I suggested, speaks to what's unhealed in ourselves, what's undiscovered in ourselves, what has not been matured from within ourselves. So sometimes we so over focus on
90 seconds.
the relationship or the relationships or the soulmate relationship or the soul ties that we neglect our own work and our own cues to doing our own work in that process. You may have heard my countdown, so I'm losing my ability for you to call in live. Those of you who are already on the phone, you will remain on the phone, even at past the 2:00 hour.
60
And you
seconds.
still will be able to jump in and ask your questions, comments, and requests. I just ask that you mute your phone line if you know you got background noise going on. Kiona, that's you. No, that's not Kiona. That's my area code 305. I apologize, 305. You don't even have your hand raised, so I shouldn't have your mic open anyway. But if you decide that you do have a question or a comment, just jump in there. And those of you whose mic is open, area code 281, 216, and 323. And of course, 305, if you have a question or a comment, as well as the others who are sitting
10 seconds.
who are sitting now in my Blog Talk Radio switchboard, you will still be able to actively participate. Everyone else, and that includes my YouTube live audience, will have to go back to my Blog Talk Radio page and listen in archive. Otherwise, we will continue on here at youtubelive.com or youtube.com/Voodoo Tie until we end the conversation. Sky Frank,
This is Kiana. I have another question.
go ahead.
Okay, so, and I'm so grateful for your service, because there's so many marketeers and people who aren't truly called and know what they're doing, that it has really messed up the culture. So my point I'm trying to get to, a local spiritualists or people can, you have the services readily available to them. So they're thinking that they're having spirits and energies and demons and jinns casted off of them, only to feel better for a temporary period of time, and then it jumps back on. So my purpose in mentioning about the marketeers and the instant spiritualists was to say, could it have been that they didn't perform the ceremony properly, or could it have been that the actual demons and jinns and spirits came back to that house, that being, and reattached themselves? So I asked, it was a two-part question.
Well, in order to get an answer for that, it would be two things. It would be what the practitioner did, but also the client's understanding. So my initial response to what you're putting in the air is, it's the placebo effect. What about the placebo effect? You didn't consider that. Even doctors, even science does a placebo effect. There are people right now who are giving up their blood and their spit and their congestion for the benefit of science, for the benefit of us all, to find some kind of way to fix, repair, or change what we're dealing with right now as it relates to this virus. But there are going to be people who are going to get a placebo. They're not going to get the real product. They're not even going to get the watered down product that some of the other participants are going to receive. They're going to get the placebo. Because your mind says, the human mind says, okay, this is a medicine, this is a ritual, this is a fix, that's going to fix my problem. And that first passes through the illusion of your understanding. It's the illusion of your mind. And that's called the placebo effect. But you tell them this is going to fix a problem, and it fixes the problem. So you have to consider that. Not only is the charlatan sort of doing some tricknology, but there's that placebo effect, because the result has to come through the client. People often email me about follow-up to their work. And I have to remind them the follow-up comes through you. It's not my relationship that's being fixed or repaired or addressed. It's not my career that's being fixed, repaired, or addressed. It's not my health that's being fixed or repaired or addressed while you do your exercise and eat your food and take your medicine, or the ritual application is being applied. The result is going to come through the client. So we then have to determine the health of the client, literally and figuratively, in determining what's happening. I have clients who swear it's demons. I have clients that swear it's jinn. I have clients that swear it's witchcraft, dark matter, roots, hoodoo, no matter what it is. All the time, they're obsessed with it being witchcraft. They're obsessed with it being the curse. It can't be it's something wrong with you and your husband. It's the curse of the other woman. It's the curse of the mother-in-law. It's the curse of the interference that's coming from outside. How do you first cleanse that from somebody's mind who believes that that's absolutely what's happening? Yesterday I mentioned sometimes you have to trick people for their own good. Sometimes you have to hide the medication in pudding to get your child to eat it. You got to hide the medication in something that tastes sweet. That's why cough medicine tastes sweet. Cough medicine ain't really sweet by nature. That's why cold medicine, it's got flavor added to it. It's got taste added to it. Otherwise, many of you wouldn't take it, wouldn't partake in it. So that has to be questioned. That's why I'm very careful, caller and Kiona and others, when people contact me with that position. I'm very careful about people overfeeding me information. And then you're coming to me asking for me to decipher something, discern something, but you want to spend 15 minutes telling me your opinion about it first. We don't even do that at the doctor's office. You might say, okay, I don't feel well, or this didn't happen, or that didn't happen, or this has changed. But at some point, you got to be quiet and let the examination happen. Let the labs take course. And so when we're looking at work, we're talking about doing labs. A lab might be forms of divination. A lab might be, let me see your shrine, because my godchildren know what I'm talking about. Let me see the most recent picture of your shrine. Let me see the most recent picture of your ancestral altar. And so I'm going to see signs there in activity, signs there in change, coupled with the results of what's being said and what's being ministered in the divination, in order to get a proper diagnosis, a proper synopsis of what happens. If you're saying, I'm coming to you to tell me, is this a spirit? Is this a demon? Is this a jinn? But then all the while you're telling me, I know it's a jinn because, it was in my dream. I know it's a jinn because I went to 5 other, online psychics who said it was, and so now I'm coming to you for you to fix it. No, you're coming to me first off to agree with 5 people I don't know. You first off asking me to agree with 6 people, you and the 5 other readers you went to before you came to me. You're asking me now to validate their skills and ability. And no doctor is going to do that. A doctor is going to look at your record. A doctor is going to look at your medical record. But that doctor then has to perform their own tests. Has to get that second opinion, has to perform their own labs, has to do things from a scientific perspective. And so root work and conjure and hoodoo is not very different if you're dealing with real legitimate people. So, if the client perceives it to be a curse, perceives it to be demons, then that's just as real as a real curse itself. That's just as real as a real, spirit attachment, as opposed to it being a legitimate one. Are you with me? Did I answer your question?
You answered your question my question in more ways than one. Thank you so much, because just thinking of the power of the mind, that how powerful it truly is, and you believe in what they're telling you is actually happening, and you're believing that thing is off of you, and you're thinking that it's coming back, when all actuality it was never taken off to begin with. You just believe that it was taken off, so you weren't feeling it at first.
Right.
So you have to go through a proper practitioner and let them do what they're going to do, because it's like, I'm like, how many times does somebody have to have something cast off of them?
That's right.
Gosh, this is going to be expensive.
And that's what you need to be asking yourselves. How many times, and then if you're not getting the wrong answer when you ask yourself that question, you have to look at yourself. You have to look at yourself. Am I doing my homework? Am I doing my research? Am I properly vetting these people? Because I'm going to go right on and say it. Listen, the word spell, S-P-E-L-L, within itself suggests something that's temporary. And I tell my clients right off, I'm not looking for temporary. I'm not looking for a spell. I'm looking for the appropriate ritual application, the appropriate ceremony, the appropriate work and ebo that this doesn't reoccur. I don't like codependent clients. I don't have codependent godchildren. There are people out there who prey on that, who desire that, wish they had codependent godchildren, so that they can suck you dry of your time, your energy, and your resources. Because they're not only getting your money, some of them, they're getting in your head, they're getting into your feelings, they're getting into your emotions. You think these people are your friends, and you spending hours just discussing your life with them. And any reader doesn't want that, doesn't want all that information, doesn't want all that feedback, because you're now clouding up my ability to hear straight from spirit. So I can't take your word for it when you approach me for the first time. I can't assume the legitimacy of your ceremonies and your initiations if you can't point me to that person. And oftentimes I get, they're dead, they've moved on, well, we have a problem, I've heard it all. And sometimes it's a straight out lie. People are trying to perpetrate their pathway through these traditions, or it's, something else, either way it's problematic. But we also pick up spirits in these interactions. So let's say the work ain't real. Let's say the work was a bunch of bullshit. Um, or let's say the work was temporary for a hot minute, and didn't last. I don't believe real work is temporary. I just don't. No more than getting the appropriate solution from your healthcare professional. Now, sometimes you outgrow medication, you outpace some medication, and things need to be adjusted. Things need to be looked at. Sometimes the cancer comes back. Sometimes that's a very different thing than this commonality of, it worked for a minute, and some of you have come with the demon attachments. The jinn is attached to you. And so the root worker is either innocently trying to help you, or outwardly, ignorant and just trying to defraud you. But your sense of it worked for a minute is being fed by the jinn, by the demon that you bring with you. One of the clients that I've described before, who is always under attack, the jinn is on her. And I'm not talking behind her back. I told you this. The jinn is on you. It's on you. If I'm going to do any work, I'm going to do it on you. And I'm going to attack that thing that's giving you this sense of something's always happening in your body. And it's not healthy. It's not healthy. Then she goes further and accuses the doctors and the medical professionals that she suggests to me that she's going to see, because there was a time that wasn't happening. And we had a little bit of beef about that. I told her, as a professional, I have to push you to go see a real doctor. Because if there's something really medical going on with you and we don't address it, that can come back to haunt me. My face can end up in the news one day as the wicked voodoo practitioner who harmed you. So I have to put, when you're saying stuff is happening in your body, or stuff is happening as it relates to mental health warnings, like any professional, I have to send you somewhere for that. So go see your doctor. Make sure it's not something going on in your womb. Make sure it's not something happening, in your gut. Make sure it's not something physical, along with addressing what might be a real spiritual problem and or complication. So some people just want to accept that it's wickedness, that it's evil, as opposed to looking at themselves and doing their work. And there are practitioners out there who are taking full advantage of that. Full advantage of that. I like how Hoodoo occultism said that in this business, in this culture, in this practice, spiritual practice, voodoo, hoodoo, Ifa, Fa, not only are we drawing to us people who are hungry for spirit, thirsty for spiritual growth and progress, but we attract craziness too. We attract crazy. We attract people with vivid imaginations. We attract people who want to mimic what they believe they're seeing on American Horror Story or in the Skeleton Key, and they want that kind of reality. And when they're not getting it out here in this so-called real world, they're creating it, really creating it within themselves and at the conscious level. And to those people, I beg you to write a book, write a script. I need another movie job. Write a script, and let's work that out at the creative level. But if you're coming to me, I'm not only going to take your spirit life seriously, but as a qualified practitioner and the king and leader of New Orleans Voodoo, I'm also going to take your health seriously. And if the cues are on the board, if the cues are on the table, if the cues are empathically being pushed towards me to question, I'm going to question. I have some clients that are not happy with me about it. I have some clients that are upset with me about it. I have one or two who hang with me. They're not happy about it, and they don't talk to me very often, But then every now and then they'll show up again. They'll come through again, you know, but I'm not going to ignore it. I can't. You wouldn't expect a social worker to ignore child abuse. You wouldn't expect a nurse, a doctor, a dentist, a school teacher, a police officer, another grown adult to ignore child abuse. So I'm certainly not going to ignore real health cues, real health red flags, real health red flags. And so I'm going to question it. And it does come up in Odoo. Sometimes it's not me questioning it, it's not me being a good neighbor. It is absolutely written into these Odoos. Health problems are written into these Odoos. So sometimes an Odoo says, investigate health problems, investigate mental health problems, investigate things that happen in a woman's womb, investigate things that happen with a man's genitals. And I have to find a way, just like any other Babalao or Ianifa, to say that in a way that's diplomatic, in a way that's receivable, you know, from my client, you know, from the person who's being read in that moment. All of that skill and ability has to go into providing readings. That's why, you know, I keep making a big deal about people wanting to quickly jump into readings. Hoodoo occultism asked the other day, why is everybody in a rush for initiation? And often it's for readings. It's for the ability to do consultations. It's for the ability to charge people for services. And this is being addressed and this is being looked at all out of balance. All out of balance. I get the offerings and the donations that are sent by way of my Yahoo 360 in email alerts. But many of you, and this is not specific to you, beloved Keisha, but many of you are using all these different names and identities. And that also draws energy and spirits to you as well. Some of you've got a dozen usernames, a dozen internet names, and then your email is something else. And then I get your PayPal, and your PayPal is something else. That's why I stress communicate with me by email, because your email don't lie, because your IP address don't lie. But often I don't know one person for another. I know you as your email, but then you're communicating to me through a username, and I, in my mind, it's two completely different people until you bring that together. Miss Green know what I'm talking about. You completely somebody else until I can bring, you know, those bits of loose information together. When I get the offering, the donation for $5, for $10, for $20, I don't often respond to that. I don't often send out thank you notices to that. One, for this reason, it's hard to keep up with who all is what. And two, there's no written request attached to those. When people send a donation for readings, for work, there's often a written request attached to it. So not only do they send the donation, but then they send an email. Or within the body of the donation, they take the time to be specific. My name is, this is who I am. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for the broadcast. You know, I'm just sending love. I'm just sending, you know, thoughtfulness and appreciation. And I absolutely do get those. I just don't always have the time to respond directly to them because the people who are asking for something, asking for service, I often feel like I need to respond to them in a quick manner, in a timely manner. But I absolutely do appreciate the gifts and the without much of any wording or email. Grateful for you. I see you. I acknowledge you, and I'm thankful. I might consider going into my PayPal maybe during the course of the show and then checking to see who is what. But again, if you all aren't being explicit in your communications, remember I'm a child of a retired school teacher. I'm looking at grammar, I'm looking at spelling, I'm looking at word usage. How you word your communications with me is crucial. Those of you who don't say a whole lot, who don't use a lot of wording, you don't usually get a whole lot of response back from me. There's not a whole lot to then look at, to then respond to. Um, Tanya Bruner, Takia Winston, Alex Simon. These are people who are using the fullness of their name. Julia Trasvant. I don't know who Julia Transvant is, and I don't need to necessarily. But if you're in the chat right now, you know Julia Transvant in this room. So it's not always clear to me who is sending the offering. We're just grateful, and some people don't want to be identified. Um, Bruner, I know is in the chat. Takia Jet, we know, is in the chat. But people don't always write out things. People don't always spell out things. It's a product of the society that we exist in now. You know, WYD, um, WTF, LOL. You know, it's a pop cultural nuance of today that we don't write things out fully. We don't express ourselves fully. And some of my younger clientele, 20 something, even 30 something, you don't use your words well. And you expect your lover, your partner, your friend, your coworker, society to hear you and to respect you and to acknowledge you, but you don't express yourself well. And your intentions are good, but man, some of you, I have a hard time even understanding what you're trying to say, what you're trying to express, because you're not putting even your English together well. You're not putting your French together well. People who communicate um, in proper English, in proper Spanish, in correct formal Portuguese, I can use Google Translate and understand and communicate with them just like they speak English and they right here with me. But there are people who read and write in American, in English, who I have the hardest time making sense of what you're saying. You're talking in all euphemisms. You're talking in all cliches. You know, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? No, I don't know what you mean. Every other word is, you know what I mean. Every two words is, you know what I mean. Every other sentence is, you know what I mean. And no, I don't know what you mean. Because you aren't using your words. You aren't bringing your communication skills to the best of their ability to the surface. I love hip hop and I love my rap artists. I like to believe that they pay attention to wording, that they pay attention to detail, that they pay attention to vocabulary and grammar. They're creative with it. They play around with it. But then there are others who are only operating at their skill set, at their skill level, and they're only speaking in broken phraseology, and it's indicative of your inner language. If your inner language is just as broken as your outer language, man, it's no wonder you're not getting through the spirit. It's no wonder you're not getting through with your ancestors. So sometimes learning ancient languages like Yoruba and Ewe and Akan and Fan only heighten your ability to interact and connect with ancestors that don't understand a word we're saying today, who can't understand how we are communicating today. We've taken words and turned them into new words, you know, new phraseology. 420. What does 420 mean 50 years ago? Not 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. 420 was the time of day or the date. Okay? It wasn't all the other stuff that we now feed it. So not only practicing, learning, studying, coming into these traditions, uh, but absolutely how we approach our practitioners and our leaders and our teachers in these traditions is critical to how we navigate language and word usage. Um, what's being said is not always being thought. What's being thought is not always being heard or projected. I appreciate you. It's a lot of conversation going on in the chat. It's really hard for me to talk and read the chat and scroll up at the same time. And so, beloved, if you really have a question about your PayPal, about your donation, I need you to email me after the show so I can look at it a little clearer. Um, just for me now to go into PayPal and stop and look and scroll through names, and I'm certainly not seeing your name. I'm not seeing Keisha. Am I even talking to a Keisha? Yeah, I'm not seeing Keisha Smith anywhere. Um, so no, you would have to email me off the air in order to get clarity about that specifically. Do I have other questions, comments, requests that I can respond to here?
305 is on the line. 305 is on.
Area code 305 on the line.
She must have hung up.
Yeah, I don't have an area code 305 on the line. So I'm not seeing it. But she needs to email me. That's the kind of issue that you need to email me, beloved. That's the kind of issue I can't address right in the middle of the show. I have my PayPal open in another tab. I don't have nobody named Keisha, let alone your name, Keisha, showing up in PayPal at all. So we can address your concern off the air. That's a technical issue, not necessarily a spiritual one, and I can't address it right now. I'm not sure what you're doing or how you're trying to go at it, but there's no Keisha. I can scroll quickly while I talk without a problem, and I'm at March 29th. There's no Keisha. I'm at.
I had a question.
Yes, go ahead, beloved.
Yes, I just want to piggyback off what Kiana was speaking about earlier, and the young lady I was working with before, I decided to kind of separate a little bit and try to focus my attention on myself and possibly you. I had a situation where I went to her and she practices Palo, and she has an Nganga, and it hurt me because she called me. Well, I went to her house once and to do a cleansing, and then she called me about a week and a half later and spoke to me about how powerful whatever entity was on me was, so much so that it it went into her Nganga and broke something inside of her Nganga, which is outside, and then went into her home, confirmation, went into her home and attacked her husband, and it took her an hour or so to pull it off of him. And it kind of hurt me a little bit because she didn't mean to, she wasn't trying to. I know, and I don't look at people as spiritual advisors as friends. I need you to give me the truth. And so, there was really when she told me that, what hurt was that there was no real explanation. She was just kind of throwing stuff out at me like, well, maybe it was the lady that you helped, that you pulled something off her and then it attached itself to you and then you brought it to me. Or maybe you just picked something up. And I was agitated because I was like, I would never step into someone's home and then bring something with me that was going to wreak havoc on your family. So her advice to me was to just kind of step back on my spiritual work and just make sure that I erect my warriors, which was great advice. And that was one of the reasons why I said I was in such a dark period, like not touch and go with spirituality, but with my abilities. And it's whether or not I was just out here being ignorant and I didn't want to hurt myself. I could have hurt my family, I could have hurt my children, I could have hurt any, you know what I mean?
I blame the practitioner. Palo is volatile. Of all the systems that have developed in the New World, Palo is volatile. And Palo is being used for many things that it should not be used for. Palo is not for everybody. Palo is necromancy. Palo is necromancy. Now you're worshiping the dead. Now you're feeding the dead. Now, but more than that, they are binding the dead. The dead is bound to the pot. It's bound to the taurine, and is now serving the will of the living person. There's almost no way to look at that as positive. There are very limited ways to look at that as a positive thing. Also, when I look at the personalities and the energy and behind the individuals who operate in Palo, I see too much ego. I see too much personality. I see too much of their own character that does not come through as a positive thing, as a clear thing. Um, so I'm already, uncomfortable with anyone who's says that they're operating in Palo and then doing so for others to sort of address other people's work. The Paloists that I know who are legit are operating within their own lineage, their own family line, their own bloodline, are not harnessing other people's bloodlines, i.e., stealing somebody else's skull, somebody else's family member, and using their body and their body parts in the act of their Palo. A legitimate Palo pot has death in it, has a human skull in it, has an animal dead parts that's being utilized and harnessed to do and foster certain things. And in most cases, it's not good. In most cases, it's not good. I'm very cautious about people who use Palo for others. I know people who use Palo for themselves in their own work. They've been initiated, or knowledge and awareness has been passed down to them, and they keep it, they store it, they have it, but they're not actively utilizing it every day. They're not actively operating from it once a week, once a month, not even for themselves. So I'm always cautious of people who claim to be Palo, who claim to be operating in Palo, and are operating in Palo for other people. Often it's people who think that they can. Often it's people who believe that they can harness Palo for their own use, for their own advantage, for their own purposes. And so now you're looking at ego, you're looking at integrity, the integrity of the people involved in the process. So that would bring on, that can create the negative responses that would show up for you, what would show up as bad and harmful for you and against your family. The body that practitioner is pulling from may not be in agreement with the activities. So Palo is very hot, very volatile, very dangerous. Another reason I think Palo gained popularity in the last 20 years is because of the internet. It's also little understood and documented as opposed to Lukumi or Santeria or even Voodoo. So I also think people took the opportunity to latch on to Palo and claim Palo and operate in Palo because at the time it was little understood online. It was little knowledge about it online. So it's still an arena that people can sort of borrow from, appropriate, if you will, under the guise that, people are not going to get it, people are not going to understand it, people don't know what's real or not real in Palo. So I'll capture these newbies, these hungry, thirsty, Orisha romancers out here, and bring them into my lair because they don't know what this is anyway. I see a lot of that in relationship to Palo. Palo is often given, beloved, as an ebo. So someone is seeking a practitioner who's in an established path like West African Voodoo, um, Kandable, Lukumi, Santeria, and then the Palo is administered as an ebo, a fix, a repair, a sacrifice, and then you're sent to the Paloist um, to be cut, so to speak, or to have some level of work done. So people who are going to quote unquote Palo practitioners who have not themselves been cut, but you're having work done, supposedly, that's not authentic. That's not authentic. You don't do work for people through Palo who have not been cut in Palo. Palo is too secretive for that. It's too mysterious for that. They can't discuss what they do to outsiders in Palo. So they're not going to do work. A real Palo practitioner is not going to do work for somebody who has not been cut in Palo. So yeah, that makes me nervous
That was
because
one of my problems because it was small things, small little nuances that was because she brought me into this light of wanting to explore ATRs and the light. So I really appealed to her a lot because she was literally the only other person I could speak to about it. Everyone else around me are Christian, Baptist, or swears just Satanism. So I wouldn't impose that on other people. And you know, your vibe attracts your tribe. So I've been
yeah,
accumulating a few friends that are in the now in the light. But one of the things that drew me away from her was she stated, you know, I was like, well, you know, Santeria has been pointing out to me for some reason. I don't know why. I like Ifa and I came through Ifa, but I really like Santeria as well, and I like their initiations. And she said, well, I don't know anyone in Santeria, but they're basically all the same thing. And I was just like, no, they're not. But okay. And I didn't want to disagree with her because she was to me in the aspect of no, she knew more than me in my spirit, in my heart, because she
stop for a second. Stop for a second.
But
Stop for a
I was so
second.
upset about it.
Stop for a second, beloved. She was right in that Lukumi, Santeria, West African Ifa is all the same thing. It's driven from the same source. So maybe she heard you say I don't like Ifa, but I'm drawn to Santeria. What is it about Santeria that you're drawn to? Because Santeria is Ifa. It's Cuban Ifa. And so the rules are going to be similar, if not the same. Now, how they do things is different. How they do things is different. But it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's pulling from traditional Ifa, Santeria. What, and I'm not suggesting you, but what others might be drawn to is a demonstration they see of Santeria in social media. And it looks like witchcraft. It looks like ritual work. It looks like spell work. People are not seeing the protocols and the rules that go hand in hand with the application of those processes. I posted up a picture that a couple of people didn't like on Instagram yesterday with Babalu Oye and Omolu from a Lukumi Santeria perspective. Some would say from a Catholic perspective. But those paths are not the same. Catholicism is clearly not Lukumi, it's clearly not Santeria, it's clearly not Nago in terms of how things are done. You can't get the same produce in Cuba as you can in West Africa. You can't get the same plants in Haiti as you can in New Orleans. So how they do things is clearly going to be different. But the system is pulling from the same root. You're still not going to have any more than 16 palm nuts. You're still not going to have any more than 256 Odus. You're still not going to initiate and come into the system without following specific protocols to gain access to that knowledge, to that information, to that power. That's where the differences come in. That's where the differences come in. So I hear you, beloved. I do. I hear you, which is why I'm who I am as a practitioner. I hear you as someone who hears the voice of African Americans, Indigenous Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, who say that we need a access, we need a way into these traditions, into these systems that has not been provided to us before. We need access to a way into these systems beyond, the expense, beyond the language barriers, beyond the travel, beyond the sexism, beyond the other stuff that's happening. But it does not lessen our need for rules, protocols, hierarchy, addressing these pathways in all truth, in all earnest. And so I keep beating that drum. There's no shortcuts. There's no shortcuts. But Paulo is not an answer. Thank you for calling in and participating. But Paulo is not an answer. I'm quickly losing time. I'm surprised Blog Talk Radio still is allowing us to go on. So I am going to move forward. I will be with you again momentarily, whether it be today or tomorrow. I will come forward again. All is truly and indeed a blessing. I appreciate those of you who took the time out of the middle of your day to spend 2 hours and 45 minutes with the Divine Prince, House of the Divine Prince, Thai Potions, and Hoodoo Central. Genevieve, I would love to answer your call, but your comment or respond to it, but I just can't. Again, they're going to disrupt me momentarily. And I'm going to end the YouTube live as well because I need to hydrate. I need to get something to eat. 2 hours and 45 minutes is a long time to sit in one place and do any kind of broadcast, any kind of show. So I certainly appreciate each and every one of you. Divine love and light. All is a blessing. Congo Square.
Congo Square.
Thank you.
The Omas Indians prepared this place for us centuries before our arrival. A sacred spot where corn festivals were celebrated. The Omas Indians prepared this place for us centuries before our arrival. Congo Square, a sacred spot where corn festivals were celebrated. And as the colonizers came,
Yes, greetings. Thank you.
our host, the Omas
Thank you.
Indians,
Yes, please hit like.
they
Please
pushed
subscribe
aside our host.
to the show.
The colonizers came,
I certainly appreciate
pushed
you. All is a
aside
blessing.
our host and introduced
like,
us in chains.
Add me, respond to
And
my
by the late
invitation to follow.
1700s, we
Please, thank you.
somehow, recognizing the sacredness of Le Parc,
No hoodoo
Le
occultism.
Congo,
I'm done.
we somehow, and the how of our somehow persuasive methodologies is not clear at this moment. The how
I'm
is not
done.
clear.
Thank you.
How our persuasive methodologies work is not clear at